This is the first ASC Live we've done of the 2024 Accessibility Summer Camp year, if you will. So it's very exciting, and we're so happy that you all could be here. And it is noon, so we are going to get this show on the road because Stephen and I have so much to talk about and so much to get your opinions on today. So with that, this is ASC Live, the Holiday and Events Edition with special guest Stephen Cutchins. More on that in just a minute, but I do want to give you just a few little housekeeping elements first. So before we get started, note that we do have automatic captions available in Zoom, and we have edited captions available on the recording in a week. We have the chat enabled. Please interact there. The Q&A feature is the place to put your questions for the presenters. Or if you need Zoom assistance, our wonderful moderator, Jacob, will be watching the Q&A for those kinds of things. So with that, hello, welcome from misty and chilly Wichita, Kansas. I'm Crystal Iseminger, Director of Accessibility at WSU Tech and the Director of Accessibility Summer Camp. We thank you for attending our first ASC Live discussion today. As an offshoot of the Accessibility Summer Camp Conference, this program seeks to explore a wide range of accessibility topics with experts and passionate accessibility advocates. Today, we're fortunate to have Stephen Cutchins, Senior Product Manager for Accessibility at Cvent, and he's here with us to help explore event accessibility in many forms. And this conversation was kind of inspired by the abundance of events and gatherings we experience throughout the year, especially from November through January. And before we jump into a couple of polls, though, I want to let our guest tell us about himself.
Sure. Hope you have a full hour. I have a fun story. So Stephen Cutchins, again, I'm the Accessibility Senior Product Manager here at Cvent. Cvent is spelled on my shirt in sign language, if you can read it. Cvent, C-V-E-N-T, it's a software company that makes software for software products for events. So from I want to do an event that's small that runs on a webinar like something like this to something big where I'm going to be a planner and plan an event in Morocco. I got to go to Morocco once for an event. It was pretty cool. And I need to book hotel rooms and view them in 3D and schedule block the rooms and run the mobile apps and all that stuff. It's all us. So we're the biggest in the world. It's about 1,500 software companies. In this event space, we're the biggest. Myself, I come from a long line of a family with disabilities. My mother died when I was 7. She had cancer. So to prolong her life, they removed one of her legs at the hip. It was bone cancer. So I remember this is, mid 70s, running up and having to hold the door open for my mom because ADA didn't exist. So little things like that to give me kind of some semblance, since I was an orphan, some kind of semblance of a normal life. Every summer I'd spend a couple of weeks with my aunt and uncle. My grandparents raised me, and I spent it with my aunt and uncle. They had a pool. They had two kids in wheelchairs, cerebral palsy, one of whom was nonverbal. Pammy and David. Pammy could speak, but difficulty speaking, but she was in a wheelchair. David, was a little bit younger. He was in a wheelchair also. He could crawl, but he was completely nonverbal. So I remember my Uncle Al, and I was probably 8 or 9 or 10 at the time, trying to communicate with, it was called Speak and Spell, trying to communicate with David when I was a little kid. And it just stuck with me. So I myself have a neurological disorder called Tourette syndrome. So I have tics and twitches. My children do now. I used to not really talk about Tourette's as much. I do now a lot because my kids have it. I have a son and a daughter, and my daughter a little more than my son, but I can't hide it anymore. I don't want to. I want to talk about it. So, and amazingly enough, out of the woodwork, at least now 3 people have come up to say, like, hey, I have Tourette's, so I do this or I do this, and we openly talk about our tics and our kind of habits, like my grandmother used to say. So so probably 20 years ago, I was on a project on a company, and they said this ADA 508 was federal WCAG thing. We don't know what it is. You got to figure it out. I was on a quality test lead. And I said, okay, I'll figure it out. And 20 years later, it's all I do. Well, for about 18 years, it's been all I do. But really, really love what I do. I really got into helping I worked for some really large enterprise and helped them create their own accessibility center of excellences practices. Did a lot of federal work, helped with a lot of federal agencies, working with a lot of CEOs and CTOs and CIOs, creating accessibility practices. And then it came up where Cvent needed it and seemed like a cool company. We helped people throw great parties, and I was sick of driving into DC every day. So here I am. Long-winded story, I'm sorry, but
No, it's all good. You've got the time. And so very interesting to hear kind of your experiences. When you said the speak and spell, are you talking about the little orange?
Yeah.
Yes, right?
Yeah, he tried to get David to, I mean, this is late 70s.
Yeah.
Tried to get David to communicate like, either hit like milk or spell milk or something like that when he was thirsty. It was really, I mean, I wish I had videos of it and could play it. I would cry every time I watch it, but to let people know, like, this is why I do this. I mean, this was just his son, and my uncle Al was trying to communicate with his kid. That was it. And now it probably would have been eye tracking, head tracking, those things. But at the time, nothing. There was nothing. So, yeah.
Well, our roots are obviously what make us passionate about these, the things that we do. And so actually we want to find out a little bit more about you, our audience, because we know you wouldn't be here if you weren't passionate about accessibility. So since this is the event and holiday edition, we have a poll. We're going to start with one question. Actually, I guess it's going to probably show both of these questions at the same time. So the first question is, will you be attending some sort of gathering or event between now and early January, either personally or through work? Yes, no, or not sure are your answers in that order. The second question, and this is the trivia question of the day, what percentage of adults in the US have a disability? Is it 0 to 5%, 5 to 10%, 10 to 15%, 15 to 25%, or 25 to 35%? Ooh, nice. You guys you're quick on the ball. We're up to 84% participation. %, participation. Leave it open for just a few more seconds. All right, I don't see the percentage moving. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And I'll share these results with you because they're very interesting. I hope you can see that we have 89% of those who responded said yes, they would be attending some sort of event or gathering. 3% said no. Gosh, that's kind of cool. I know I get very evented out by the end of December, early January. And then we had 8% that said not sure. So while this is, often applicable to this time of year, we attend events of one sort of another, digital or in person, throughout our year. So we hope that you'll be able to take some interesting resources and ideas away from today's discussion. As for the second question, Stephen, do you want to tell them the answer on that one?
Sure. And I do want to specify there in the US have a disability. So because globally it's a little bit less. It's actually about 26% of adults, according to the CDC, Center for Disease Control. That's 26% of adults in the US has some form of a disability. I think globally it's about 16. I know UK, I was just over there, is 22. So 26% of adults, it's a huge number. So, what we do with Cvent, when we do an event, and we do a lot of big conferences like the CSUN Assistive Technology Conference, American Federation of Blind, National Federation of Blind, where it's 100%, we assume it's 100%. But one of the things why I'm so aggressive about what I do is because in a lot of conferences, I don't see, we know that like with me, Tourette syndrome, it's not overly visible, can be sometimes not, but I'm pretty sure that the amount of the percentage of people I see with a disability does not match the general public. And that's a little bit disappointing when we get it. And it's either one of two things. And I'm going to talk about event planners in general. It's either that people with disabilities don't want to come to events, don't want to come to conferences, don't want to come to, or we event planners don't enable it. And my guess is it's probably the latter. It's probably we're not making them either comfortable or confident they can participate, that they can even get there. They can even, once they get in the doors, it can be a bunch of stairs, or you go to a party at a bowling alley and the entrance is all the way around the back. They're not even going to go, and we don't let them give them that information. And again, from us, from Cvent, from a technical perspective, we need to make sure they can register, they can, use the maps, they can understand, sign up for the sessions. And if it's in person, check in and to go back to that, it's probably that people with disabilities don't want to go. The numbers are huge. It's just we don't make them comfortable enough to go.
I mean, in this room, if you did the math for that, it'd be about 12 people of this have some sort of a disability. And we're going to talk throughout this session about some, online kind of specific best practices. We're going to talk a little bit about in person. But when I first started talking to Stephen about this, and you said something, Stephen, that really hit home, and it was about asking. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that asking is so important?
Yeah, so our clients, they really mean well. And they asked about, I was probably around food. It's been a couple of weeks and I get senior moments by the minute, but it was probably around food. Our clients come to us and say, hey, we want to be really inclusive. What do we do in registration? How do we ask people? Like, I can't just ask somebody like, are you blind? Right. So I joke around, it's the 57 flavors of food. Are you vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, halal, you name it. We ask lactose intolerant, all of these questions. And then we have a text entry field of, do you require ADA accommodations? And it just doesn't, I mentioned not 2 minutes ago about making people feel kind of welcomed and open. If you put my disabilities in a text box, so a former test lead she was in a wheelchair. She had a personal care assistant. Imagine also, let's say she was blind. She wasn't, but so that's a lot of data to put in a text box. Wheelchair, semicolon, personal care assistant, semicolon, service animal, maybe, semicolon, white cane / blind. Like, come on, you're not going to feel welcomed by trying to put your reality and your needs in a checkbox. So a text entry box. So what I always tell planners is ask questions. Somebody might say, well, I'm deaf. That's it, or hearing impaired. But say, and we can't say, are you deaf? Because, ADA laws, we want to do privacy, but do you require captions? If you do, what language do you require? I mean, maybe English, maybe Spanish, maybe, I don't know. Do you require sign language interpreter? If so, what language? American Sign Language, British Sign Language, Spanish Sign Language. Ask people details about that. And we were adding up a list. I could easily 15, 20 questions easily to try to make people more comfortable. And if you ask somebody, for example, who's deaf, if they want to go to your conference and you give a checkbox versus you say, do you require captions? Do you require sign language interpreter? Oh, if so, what language? They're going to go. If they don't go, it's because they couldn't afford it or they couldn't, travel was too much or whatever. But you have probably made them comfortable enough to realize I'm going to be able to participate. I'm going to get the exact same experience. And I'm going to give a real world example. I'm going to give a little dig on Cvent. We had a big Cvent Connect. It's our giant conference. It's 2,000 people. It's in Vegas. And we did another one in Europe. I think that's another over 1,000. We did everything right. We had captions, but in the room itself, when they get the big 100-foot, if you've been to Vegas, it's Caesar's Palace. It's just giant screen. It's amazing. And we ran captions through our mobile app. And instead of, we normally do them with a monitor on the side, and we even paid a company, 3Play Media, to do our captions, our live captions, instead of relying like on AI, automated captions, auto-generated. We did everything right. But we didn't think of the feed and 3Play even said, we do it all the time. We should have had the monitors on the side and we didn't. So let me give my phone. So here was my experience as a sighted user. I can, and a hearing user, I'm watching, I'm seeing people dance, I'm seeing people talk. It's great. What's the experience for somebody who can't hear? They were in this giant room and they were looking at their phone. because they had to use that for captions, and we screwed up. We admitted it. And I would assume if we go through the efforts of saying, do you require sign language interpreting? Do you, if so, what language? Do you require captions? Do you require multi-language support? Then if we got enough feedback about that, we probably wouldn't have made that mistake. And I'm going to make very sure next year we have those monitors on the side also, because I want people to be looking at the stage and not at their phone.
That's so actually I want to dig a little bit deeper into what you were talking about, especially with the asking questions about like captioning and interpreting in different languages. What would you say to people who maybe are running a smaller conference that don't have like a huge bank of monetary resources to do these things? Maybe they can afford interpreters in ASL, but don't even have the wherewithal to get an interpreter in a different language. Like, is it okay to say, hey, do you need an interpreter, but leave off that specific language piece, or is that too uninclusive? Like, how would you, if somebody you were helping plan an event came up to you and said, well, this is my situation, how would you handle that with them?
Normally, if they can't afford the interpreter, that's what we've seen a lot. And in some cases, like we had a sign language interpreter, and we also had, except for in the big plenary, and we had 3Play Media doing live captions. There's also a cost to that. At least do automated captions. If it's through Zoom, turn on live. If it's not, and I've used this before, I don't love it. We were even at a conference once, and the feed stopped. PowerPoint has built-in captions, and they're not bad. They're pretty good. So that's probably the next best thing. There are things, and I have a couple that's, what's the Microsoft Live Transcribe? Google has one. I think it's Google. I don't even know, but there are apps out there that worst case is you could do like a screen share from your phone and set it on the podium. That's what we did. Set it on the podium and then have it broadcasted up on the screen. So there are things that you can do that are free. I really like the PowerPoint one. We even did this once too, where we were just essentially just talking. I used to have a team lead who was a tester, not the lead, but Joaquin was his name. He was deaf. And we were federal, so he would use FedVRS, Video Relay Service. And he would use that because it was a federal project. We could use it for free for project work. But if it was down, didn't work, we had to do a quick meeting, turn on PowerPoint, share it on the screen, put a blank screen, and use it for captions. So PowerPoint was running just for the captions, and it worked really, really well. So there are plenty of ways around it. If where there's a will, there's a way, especially for smaller groups or somebody can't do. Oh, and real quick about like sign language interpreting, let's say. There is a cost. There are ways that you can get it cheaper, but really it's ask what the language is. And it may have to be if one person's Spanish, one person's English, maybe you have a sign language interpreter in Spanish and the captions in English, or vice versa. You may have to compromise, because something is definitely better than nothing.
The PowerPoint piece, actually, I was at Accessing Higher Ground in Denver about a month ago, and one of these sessions started by introducing, like, nobody else in the room at that time knew about that feature, and they had a QR code. You could get it right to your phone even, and you could choose the language you wanted those captions transcribed into. And it was crazy because we had like Spanish, French, and I read about this much French after 4 years of high school French several decades ago, but it was enough that I could piece that it was doing a decent job. I'm sure it's not perfect, but that is a piece of just wow technology if you have PowerPoint. So thank you for bringing that up.
And I love apps. I'm a huge fan for communicating. There's a Microsoft, I think it's Translator. You can do I should open it up, but you start I think it's a conversation, it's called, or a group conversation or something. And I started, there could be 20 people in the room. We used to do this also. And just ask Joaquin, like, hey, let's chat. Where do you want to go to lunch? That kind of thing, right? Where you start the conversation and it comes like a code or a QR code, you scan it, and I'll put, English. Joaquin was from Puerto Rico. He might put, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to give a real world example, which was pretty recently. I was talking about this out in Las Vegas at the big conference. An attendee came up from Japan. And I was talking about apps, and there were two people from Japan, had a little difficulty communicating. So I said, let's check out this app. I started the conversation. I picked English and she picked Japanese. And I could speak into it and she could see, she could hear. So, but still she could have typed if she wanted to, because you can voice input, you can text, text input. So somebody who's blind, for example, somebody who's deaf, they could read it. Somebody who's blind, they can hear it. It's really cool. But I communicated through mine in English and she both read it and heard it in Japanese. And as she was listening, she kind of went, oh, she went, it's right. It was just cool. And she didn't have a disability. All it was a language difference, but it felt so like we were just inclusive. So I see somebody asking about the app. This one let me open it up. Sorry. There's a bunch of them I use. This particular one was Microsoft. I think it's Translator. Where's my Microsoft app? Ooh, where is it? Oh yeah. Microsoft Translator. Oh, I hope you can see that. I should turn off my, let me stop blurring my background and I'll show you guys. So Microsoft Translator, you go into the little group one and start a conversation. Excuse me. And I put my name and I choose English. I hit start. Maybe hit start again. There we go. There's that little QR code and a code you type in. So you put that code in. And when I go in it, hi, this is Stephen Cutchins. I'm on a conference for accessibility summer camp. Let's see how accurate this is. I hope you can see it. It's pretty cool. How about that? And somebody can go in and say, yeah. And again, on the bottom, I just tapped it. There's a little keyboard, so I can type, HELLO, and then that gets sent in. So I can do voice or text input. Somebody else, when they hear that, I want to hear what he said. I want to see what he said or what he typed in whatever language I choose. And there's dozens of languages. And again, when that lady went, she literally, as she was reading it, she went, oh, she was so excited. And it was such a cool moment to, be able to communicate. Again, this was just language, and she spoke English. Her English was way better than my Japanese. But it was a cool moment. It was really, really cool moment.
So we actually have a couple questions. And Eric, I love where your head is at there. Eric is asking, because you had a QR code, could you do it remotely? Like put the QR code up on the screen in a Zoom meeting or something? Oh,
I'm sure that would have worked here. Yeah. We'll play? I will. Yeah. Let's see.
Download the app or just
wait a minute, I have to exit it and go. Let's see, or do the code. So when I do start, I pick English. Let's see. It's what is that? RCGQI, and there's also a QR code if you can scan that. If you guys want to try it, I don't know if it's clear enough to do a good QR code, but
come on. Ooh. I can't get it to the QR code. Where do you go to translate?
Translate. Well, I would probably just install the app Microsoft Translator, but it says translate.it/RCGQI, and somebody's on. Charlotte. Hello, Charlotte. How are you today? There we go. And I'm hoping Charlotte's going to say, hey, it worked. There we go. And oh, I forgot my microphone is still on. I'll turn it. Very cool. And you can pick, somebody I'm sure somebody's French or Spanish or German, somebody out there, Korean, maybe somebody will speak a different language. I'd love it. It was Japanese, but really, really cool. And imagine like a holiday party. Especially one where we're a multinational company, somebody comes from India, English is a second language. They might not speak English at all. We can't assume that. And then suddenly it's like, speaking whatever language or reading out whatever language. It's just so cool. It really, I've always liked this for years, but really, and again, with Joaquin, the guy on that project, really, really loved it. But with this girl, from this lady from Japan, that really drove it home. Like we can use this all the time.
That's amazing. Oh, Vanessa, that's a good question. Google Translate has a conversation feature. I didn't even know about that. I knew they had Translate because we've directed students to it before. Yeah, if you find out that that works, by all means, email Stephen or I. We can share that out. Which, by the way, I am going to compile kind of a resource sheet from today of things we talk about, resources to any online sites, and email that out to everybody who registered. It might take me till next week to get all that done, but definitely I'll make sure Microsoft Translator and the link to the website is on that resource app. So I love where we're going, but we have so many more things to talk about. I did see that there was one question in the Q&A, but it looks like that got answered.
Someone has their hand raised.
Oh, that's what it is. I'm sorry. Jacob, could you allow them to speak?
Go for it, Dawn. Hi, Dawn. If you're trying to talk, you seem to be muted right now.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
You're all right.
I'm so sorry. Could you go back over in terms of, could you kind of explain a little more regarding the PowerPoint caption functioning?
Excuse me, Crystal, can you share? We can show it.
Yeah,
We can show it live. Yeah. So what you do is
personally used it before. Have you? Do you?
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, I can here. I will.
I think you have share. If you're better at navigating it, by all means.
No, here. Let me do. Can you guys see which?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Let's see here. Ooh, which screen was I sharing? Oh, I have 3 screens open. Sorry, my camera broke before this call. I'm sharing the one I wanted to do. So I'm on my little laptop one instead of my normal pretty camera. There we go. Maybe not. Let's try it again. Okay. Can you guys see? Can you guys see PowerPoint?
Indeed.
Okay, so we just went into blank presentation and did on the bottom right here when you start sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I need to. Oh shoot! I can't share the director one. There's a setting on the. Oh, let me see if I can swap. Wait a minute. I just realized it. Display settings, swap presenter. There we go. Okay. See these guys over here?
Mm-hmm.
For the marker, the whatever. The one right here, toggle subtitles.
Okay.
So you just turn subtitles on. And then now let me swap our screens again. And now as I speak, it automatically shows subtitles at the bottom. And we were at a conference when I think it was the Disability End Conference. It was a few years ago. The feed for the live captioners died. So we're like, what do we do? And we opened up PowerPoint, started running this so at least people could have captions. It's not the best. I've actually given feedback to Microsoft where I wish you could make it like full screen or make like custom 3, 4, 5 lines, whatever. It used to be 1 line, at least now it's 2, but it's better than nothing. And it's actually pretty accurate. And again, it's better than nothing. So if you're at a small meeting, let's say, and it's 5 people, you're doing a little show or something, and you don't have captions like through Zoom or whatever, or you're doing something live, this is it again, it's better than nothing. I think it's a pretty good option.
And I have an email somewhere that I'm not going to try to look up right now, but it was from the individuals who did that conference presentation where they had the QR code that you could go to where it would do the captions on your phone, and you could choose the language and everything. I'm going to try to find that workflow, and I'll add that to the resource page that I send out.
Nice.
Because that would also be, it was nice because it did have a longer transcript style view.
And I think after this is done, Can you do a transcript? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if you could do a transcript now that I've never tried it. I would have to dig into it. I don't think you can do a transcript. That's the one bad thing. Like Zoom, you can do a transcript when captions are enabled. I don't think it does that with PowerPoint.
Gotcha. Okay, so we did have one other question from Bridget. Do you believe this app, and I think that's talking about the Microsoft Translator, would be a good resource for a large crowd like a commencement where students have family members that would need a different language?
I think that'd be great. Yeah, if it's something like that, so it needs to come from a phone. It's probably best to have a phone on the podium. That seems a little what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of casual, like we're going to have this phone up here running, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be running through the microphone, but I think it's a great idea.
I mean, but what if
I
it was
really
a
do.
tablet? To where, I mean, like your speech was on a tablet, right? People use that all the time or whatever. It could be laying on a podium, and especially if you had, I don't know, the lavalier mic or something Bluetooth to it.
Yeah. Oh, that's very true. Yeah.
I mean, you could probably find a workaround that would work, especially if, you know that is something that would help people engage.
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking to our commencement organizer after today, because that's a really cool idea.
Yeah. And this came out of, I was on a project. It was for healthcare.gov. And I was the accessibility manager, 508 manager on the project. And there was a person at the company that I was at the time had been turned down for like 5 projects in a row. He was fully deaf. Joaquin was his name. And he said, people said it would be too hard to communicate with the client. It was a consulting firm, so we had to communicate with the client, right? And I'm like, if I've never had a deaf person on the project, but given the work we do, if we can't make him successful, then there's a big problem. So, and that's where this came out of. And I loved it. It worked so well between that and Fed VRS and me slowly learning sign language, but it was all the ones like want to go get a coffee or like, it was the, let's go have lunch. It was the basic stuff like eating and drinking and meeting. I think but, it was more basic stuff, but really, and he started kind of learning how to read my lips also, and I speak pretty quickly, but, it was almost seamless. And again, it was one of those things where, I mean, it was the right thing to do. And, you have a family member, a coworker, an attendee, an event, you want to make them included. And if they can't hear you, they're not included.
Yes. And we do have from Hannah, who says, according to Google, Microsoft Presentation Translator is an add-in to your PowerPoint presentation software that allows you to perform live transcription of your verbatim speech to text in real time, save and edit the transcript, and translate your presentation slides into different languages. So that's even a whole nother level you could go to. And then one more question, and then we're going to move on to some online event planning specifics and some in-person events broadly. We do have I hope I say this right, Jean. I'm not sure if it's Jean or Jeannie, from Cal Poly Humboldt. This asks, how does the PowerPoint subtitles compare to Zoom as far as accuracy? And I didn't know if that was something you have an opinion.
It was a few years. We actually did it a few years ago of the apps and the PowerPoint. They're all pretty close. They're all really, really close. I don't remember if we did Zoom. I don't think we did. I mean, AI is good and getting better all the time. I think a human, and actually I'm amazed that it picked up my name, Stephen, with a PH and Cutchins with a C. That really is impressive. I don't know if maybe I had corrected it over the years or learned it from like in emails or something like that. Cause I know it all goes to the cloud. It's all the same data from Microsoft. I don't know how it gets that now, but it did, but they're all really, really good. And there are even companies, what's the Wordly does one where AI powered captions. They're supposed to be even better, but I think that's a fee also. But again, I want to go back to they're all a viable option versus someone not knowing what somebody else is saying. That's what we really want to avoid.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about online events specifically, and you know how to verify, what to verify, and what to do. And I definitely want you to talk about the big book of event accessibility, because that was exciting to me when we were first chatting. So take it away from kind of this is your first time hosting an online event and you want to be conscientious of accessibility.
Yeah. So the big thing for starters, pick software that's accessible, and whatever it is. And if it's not fully accessible, you make it accessible. Make sure they have a VPAT or voluntary product accessibility template. Technically filled out, it's called an ACR, accessibility conformance report. We should have a test on all the acronyms, but people just say VPAT. But make sure they have a VPAT, make sure they've been audited, make sure it shows that XYZ registration product is accessible. That's the biggest one. Because you don't want to have a perfect event that's, imagine National Federation of the Blind, right? They have to hypercritical that their website itself has to work for screen readers, for braille displays. It has to, or otherwise people that they know have disabilities can't even get to their event and can't register in the first place. So that's probably the biggest one. And then do these WCAG guidelines. They seem a little overpowering if you've never done it, but luckily the software should do, well, we like to say it's the heavy lifting. The software should do the heavy lifting. So things like, you have to do proper heading structure. You have to, when it creates a web page, when it generates a page, you have to add alt text to images. You have to add probably that's the three big: alt text for images, headings, and then color contrast. Those three big things. If you do those, and the software does all the rest, like make sure things work with works with keyboard, has focus, you're probably going to be okay. And like earlier I mentioned, just ask the right questions. Ask people, do you need captions? Do you need sign language interpreting? Do you have actually a perfect example is, because I know I want to talk about, like, always talk about deaf and blind physical disabilities. Somebody says, and I've used this example before, you do your little text box and say, do you need ADA accommodations, right? But instead we put, do you use a mobility device, or do you require a mobility device? And it could be, if so, what kind, wheelchair, or you could contact them and say, I understand you use a mobility device. Would you mind letting me know what kind? Because let's say you find out, or they let you know they're in a wheelchair and they have a personal care assistant and they have a service animal. Okay. So now when I have my opening plenary, the aisle has to be wide enough for a wheelchair. Okay. And there have to be two spaces that are blanked out, one for their service animal and then one for them, and it has to be on the end. And then the third seat is reserved for their personal care assistant, right? Or a PCA. And from my perspective, when I registered them or created the software, that PCA isn't charged. They're not there to go to the conference. They're there to care for the safety and well-being and health of the person that they take care of, right? So they're not charged for the event. Now, people do say, well, what about the happy hour? Yes, you can charge them for the drinks. You can charge them for that stuff. You know what I mean? Most places don't. But I now know that instead of somebody coming up and they're in a wheelchair with a service animal and a personal care assistant, and me going, oh crap, our wheels aren't wide enough. I mean, our aisles aren't wide enough, and we don't have any seats for you, and people are scrambling. I know the aisle's big enough, and I know there are two spaces that are reserved for them, plus that third space for their personal care assistant. It makes them comfortable. It makes everybody comfortable. It just works. It's the same thing if you're doing an event and your registration, find out somebody needs a sign language interpreter. You better reserve some seats at the front because they need to see the hands of the person. You better have, normally the background is darker. They wear dark clothes. You don't want to have a big glowing flashing lights behind your sign language interpreter, because then they're not going to be able to see them anyway. So all those things go into ask the right questions, and then you can make your event better for everybody.
And one of the things that gets me that I hadn't really thought about before. I mean, I'm still young in my career as an accessibility professional. I've only been doing this for about 5 years, and so many people have been doing it for much, much longer, that I'm still surprised about things that are like, oh, I haven't thought about that before. And one of them happened almost a year ago. In January, I, thanks to my cats, slipped, fell, and had a minor concussion. My first concussion ever in my life. I didn't know what to expect. And I had some repercussions from that, especially as my job involves online monitors, looking at computers all day. And I started having headaches and I didn't understand what the problem was. And I had to go back to my doctor. And that all of that longness is to say that all of a sudden I realized that there are temporary disabilities, and those are just as necessary to be aware of and to, to accommodate as any other disability. And oftentimes that I feel like that asking allows those people to even maybe think to themselves, oh, this is something that maybe because I just fractured my hip and I'm in a wheelchair, I haven't identified as an individual with a disability before, but now I do need to make sure I have a space wide enough to get my wheelchair through.
Yeah.
And if that question wasn't there, those people also might not prompt them to ask.
Little things like presentations, and actually that's perfect for that. Somebody who gets migraines, somebody with autism, somebody who has dyslexia, give presentations in an accessible format, give them out in advance. And things like the layout, the mapping of the especially if it's larger, a venue, let them know how to get around, where the restrooms are, where the pet service areas are. If there's we used to call them quiet rooms or quiet spaces. Now it's kind of low sensory room. It has kind of less of a negative connotation. But if there's a low sensory room, let them know, because you mentioned, like, imagine somebody gets migraines. You go to a conference, you go to a conference with 2,000 people, everybody gets a migraine. Eventually, at one time or another, everybody's at least going to get like, oh my God, I got to get away. Everybody's, and you go to that low sensory room, you just need a place to kind of just chill for 20 minutes. Everybody needs it. Especially Vegas, if it's a 4-day conference, man. So everybody appreciates that. And they appreciate knowing where the restrooms are and the presentations in advance and all that thing. It's just, it's what's the one helpful for some, necessary for some, helpful for all. It really does help everybody.
You were talking about, especially in-person wise, like plenary events, but you and I had also talked about the idea, so many work gatherings or holiday parties, opening plenaries with live music, and you can end up in a space that has a light show, a barrage of sound, a lot of movement from people and bodies. And, if you have only booked one room of, let's say, the club where the band is playing for your holiday party or work get together or whatever it might be, and there's no other space, or maybe the bathroom, let's be honest, you've just now relegated any of those people who need that minute to either step outside into possibly the very cold weather, wherever they're at, inclement weather, or go hang out in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to enjoy and a party, right? And it's funny because I didn't think about things like this until after the concussion, because I am more sensitive to like all of the stimuli and things at like a concert. And I was like, well, there's like no place I can go to get away from all of this and still be a part of the event.
Yeah. Yeah, we do training, and actually we'll talk about the big book of accessibility, I know, eventually, but we do training or put more on, not just at the event, but when, during the event, during the presentation, the music, all that. But when people go to register, you need to make them comfortable. And my example is if somebody comes up and they're standing 10 feet away from the desk, because you've registered for these really big conferences. Some of the ones we run, there's thousands of people. Like I said, mentioned ours was, I think, 1,500, 2,000 people. It's pandemonium at the registration desk. We have 15 different, not registers, the little kiosk running where you come up and you check in and it prints your badge and everything, right? There's a dozen, 15. And somebody comes up and they're standing like 10 feet away, and maybe they're looking at the ground. There are ways, they're there for a reason. They're a registration desk. You know why they're there. They might need help. They need assistance. They want to do registration, whatever. Don't do, walk around, put your hand on their shoulder, hey, what's up? You doing okay? They're gone. They're going to leave your event. They're not going to be comfortable. Why they're there. So ask them, excuse me, sir, or excuse me, man, do you need help registering, or would you like to register? They don't say anything. Okay, ignore them. Come back in a minute. Ask them again. But we, like I mentioned earlier, I think about the blind, think about the deaf, but think about everybody who might not be exactly like you. They might not be comfortable asking a question, or they need to stay. Actually, this is such a great example. I got to speak at a conference. It was for employee resource groups. So one of those is, with disabilities, which was I was there, but also veterans. I'm also a veteran. And this was a giant conference during the opening plenary. And I sat all the way in the back in the very far corner, just because, I was there as a speaker, but I still wanted to listen in, but I wanted all the attendees to sit more towards the front. And this guy comes and sits next to me and he goes, "Do you mind if I sit here?" I said, "Oh, sure, absolutely." Empty table in the back, and there was 2 or 3 tables, and then all the other people gathered around. And so he sat down 2 spaces away from me. And as we started talking a little more, he ran a disability ERG. I mean, a veterans ERG, and he had PTSD. He was uncomfortable with anything behind him. And I had this experience once before the company with somebody that we hired, but he was uncomfortable with anyone being behind him. And those are the things that I would never have, luckily, never have thought about. I have to always think about, okay, I need to make sure no one's behind me, because I went through some awful things in my life. And I'm comfortable knowing there's a wall behind me. That makes me comfortable in things I would have never thought of. So he might be the best person in the world to be at your event. And if we don't make him comfortable, he's not. He's gone. He's not going to come.
So we're coming up on we have 15 minutes left, and I do want to open up at around 10 minutes for questions and more discussion. But I wanted you to share, because when we were talking earlier and about the being aware yourself at conferences or events, even if you're not the planner, if you're not the person in charge, and you shared a wonderful story about tables during happy hours and gatherings. And would you please share that? Because that is a huge, aha, we can all do our part, even if we're not in charge.
Yeah, this was a friend of mine. He runs a consulting service he'll fly around the country or go to hotels and make sure event spaces are accessible. It's called 6 Wheels Consulting. And we were just on a webinar chatting, and as I tend to do, sorry. And he said, I was talking about the height, and with Lisa, my own test lead, who was in a wheelchair, she had mentioned, we think, okay, let's hang out and have a drink. And I'm standing up here, but I'm 6 feet tall. So let's put these tables 4 feet off the ground. And I can, you can put your little food table there, a mini plate. I mean, you could set your wine glass, your beer glass, whatever, your drink, and hang out, chill, grab your glass, have a drink and talk. Well, Lisa, or, people in wheelchairs, even if they can have full mobility with their hands, it's uncomfortable putting the glass up. And if they don't have mobility, or if they use crutches, or they temporarily, so they went skiing, they broke their ankle, right? They're uncomfortable taking their hand away from their crutches to grab their wine glass. So have some tables that are low. And what he said is, and don't use tablecloths. And what happened is, if anybody here has seen anybody in a wheelchair, ever been in a wheelchair, relatives, when you roll forward, you hit the tablecloth and it sucks the tablecloth under and pulls it down. And where does it go? Literally right in your face. So you're rolling up to this table, or on the side of it, the wheels go over the tablecloth. Best case is you get a shower and champagne. Worst case is the table smashes you in the face because you pull it over. And I would have never thought about that. And, for event planners, we have to tell them, yes, they do the beautiful tablecloths. Now a lot of places, they tie them up in a knot. It's both pretty and it's safer. And that's just also for people who have a couple of drinks, don't want to step on it, but they tie it up on it. But do that for wheelchairs, but also have some that are lower, have some seating, because if you're in a wheelchair, you don't want to look up the whole time, right? Or what if you can't? You might have to do your eyes. That's exhausting. So have some chairs, have some couches that people can talk to, everyone be included, have those great conversations for somebody who isn't 6 feet like me and can stand up and put a drink up here. It was very, very eye-opening. I always thought about the tables, but not the other things like the tablecloths.
Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to, you might not be the one in charge of your event, or it might not even be an event being thrown by your company, but if you're there and you see these things that, respectfully, it is absolutely okay as an accessibility advocate to say to someone that maybe is in charge of the event, like, hey, just so you know, this could be a hazard, or this is, an accessibility issue you might want to consider for next time to be more inclusive. if you feel comfortable doing that. Some people would not, but
I would take the tablecloth off, but
some people are
I would
not.
take it off and ask and apologize later. Hey, I'm sorry, my friend here in the wheelchair was going to take a bath in champagne. So not that doesn't sound too bad, but yeah.
But yeah, so it's little things. And on that note, I do have a couple of resources that I will include in the resource document, but I am going to throw their links in the chat. And I apologize in advance that apparently the text editor feature on chat, where you can now make hyperlinks decent in Zoom, is not effective for the webinar. So this might be kind of an icky link, but I will make sure that a nice and accessible link is in the resource document. But I was really, this particular is from the Easter Seals Northern California.org, and it's how to make your holiday celebrations inclusive for everyone. The things that are on here are applicable to things we've talked about, like commencement, or even family parties for graduations, birthdays, you name it. It doesn't have to be a corporate event. It can even be personal. And they talk about some of these things that we've been chatting about, but in even a more personal, like you're having this at your home kind of a way. And the one that really stuck out to me, that validated something I'd already been thinking, was the idea for rooms for quieter socialization. With a family who is now extended wise, if everybody shows up, something almost to 40 people, and trying to have Thanksgiving in one person's house, I had to go outside because it was too much. But then you felt like you were weirdly the crazy aunt standing outside by yourself, so just little things that we can even think about in our personal endeavors to include others, include our family and friends. But we have 8 whole minutes left, and I would love to open it up to all of you in the audience who have graciously listened to Stephen and I chat for so many minutes, and get your questions or your thoughts, even sharing some personal experiences. If you would like to speak, we're okay with that. Just raise your hand using the raise hand action, and Jacob can unmute you. Or if you're more comfortable, you can put questions or comments into the Q&A area.
Yeah, Crystal, thank you for that link. So she had mentioned, I mentioned a little bit, we're working on this thing. We're going to call it the Big Book of Event Accessibility. We've had enough clients ask about this where we need to get this out there. We give them information about registration questions, and then how to make somebody comfortable when they're checking at the registration desk, and we're going to package it all. We're working, so far we have Harvard, American Federation of the Blind. I pinged them. We got feedback that their event was really, really inclusive. We got it through the app. They loved our app, which was nice. So we got to hear about the rest of it. And I think it was, there was one other guy who does, I think he's more marketing. He's in the UK, I think, but it's going to be free. It's months and months worth of work, but we want to put this book out there to let everybody know from absolute beginning to end. This is everything you need to do, not just the technical website stuff, but the registration questions to ask when you're on site. If somebody has a problem, what do you do? We want to make it, and when it's a living document too. So if anybody has any, like this Easter Seals one, I'm gonna contact them and go, hey, can we use some of your resources? We want to make this available to everybody, just to have everybody throw cool parties, just like I like to say. So be on the lookout. We have it's many months. We have one person working on it right now, so she's got a lot of work to do.
That is so exciting, though, because I remember. So Accessibility Summer Camp, the parent conference for this, we're doing our best as a volunteer conference that up to this year has been free, and this year will only be $10. But that's because of the rising cost of the technology that supports us being accessible. And it's one of those pieces that every year we've learned something new because people have given us feedback, and they've been kind enough to give us that feedback because we're all learning. But man, that book would have been really helpful a couple of years ago when we were trying to figure this all out the first time that we went online during the pandemic. And didn't do a great job of it. So that's exciting. And I think having something like that will make people feel more comfortable, more like it's more accessible to be accessible, so to speak. Because it's a lot to take in. And oh yes, we have some comments in the chat saying that, you know, limiting the sensory triggers can also affect individuals who get migraines and or have epilepsy. Goodness gracious, leave the big cinnamon wreath off the front door. And I just say that. I work in the floral department as a side gig, and have done floral for many years. And they would put this basket of these decorative cinnamon brooms that smelled like they dumped an entire bottle of cinnamon oil on them right at the front entrance, and everybody had to walk past them. I got a headache just smelling them every day, and I'm not even, you know, super scent triggered, but I can't even imagine if you were just trying to go grocery shopping and you walk into a wall of super heady cinnamon, like you might turn around and walk back out.
I was at a conference, it was federal, and they put in the invite, avoid strong scents. And I don't know if it was for just allergy triggers or migraines, or maybe a service animal that would bother their noses because they're way more sensitive than ours, but it was nice to see. And the things you might never think about, again, like I'm going to douse on perfume or cologne, and the person next to me starts sneezing, has an allergic reaction. We don't want that.
No. Okay, we have a question from Vanessa. And Vanessa asks, do you travel to every event you do, or do you plan things remotely? And I believe this is strictly for you, Stephen. And if it's a virtual event, what things do you have clients do?
So I don't, we do, Cvent does, what was the number? 100,000 events a year, I think it was, total using our software. It's insane. Some of them are virtual only. Some of them are hybrid. Some of them are in person. The numbers were staggering. So I don't go to, was it 100,000? I think it was 100,000, but let's go with that. Many tens of thousands of events a year. I tend to go to the ones specific to either like a big Cvent event. We did our big Connect conference. We did because I like run the accessibility booth and do screen reader demos of our products. I went to London for Connect UK, for Connect Europe, or I go to the CSUN Assistive Technology Conference. I go to the ones that use our products that are for accessibility, specific to accessibility. For virtual, I don't get involved with client virtual unless they come and have a question. We tend to leave that up. We have what's called CS, or client services. We give them training on how to, because in some cases, because you still use our registration products, you still go through what's called Attendee Hub and pick all your events. You know, imagine like a 4-day, you do a 4-day virtual conference, do it like Monday through Thursday, Tuesday through Friday, and you pick, in this hour, there's 3 different sessions. I'm going to pick the first one, and then on this one, I'm going to pick another one. That's all through us also. We make, in some cases, the client makes it themselves, and we have guidance, and we kind of let them know for color contrast. For example, if they pick bad colors, we will change the colors for them, or let them know if they have what's called safe mode. And if not, we let them know those don't meet WCAG guidelines, so you have to change it. Or with CS folks, we train them to let them know if you're creating a site on behalf of a client, how to make it accessible. So that's the most where I get involved is the software itself, the registration sites, the Attendee Hub. We have to make sure they're accessible. Don't get a lot involved. Have had clients sometimes ask me like how to be inclusive, what's captions versus, human versus AI, which is better, sign language interpreting. But yeah, hope they answered your question. I'd love to go to every conference out there, but
would you find time to do anything else though?
Yeah, there's a lot.
You would not be riding your bikes unless you're riding to conferences.
Yeah, no more cycling. I could bike to conferences if they pay me.
Conferences. Person on the planet. I just want to thank, first of all of you for being here, kicking off our ASC Live events for this summer camp year. We are going to be putting out our call for proposals very soon on the summer camp main web page, which I think Jacob will put the link to that in the chat. And the conference itself is going to be on June 14th. We're going to try to have conversations like this once a month leading up to it. And we hope that you will join us for those. and also join us at the conference. And please, everyone, if you would give a round of applause to Stephen, and a huge thank you, because our conversations have really opened my mind and given me some things to think about. I have lots of notes on resources to put in that resource document. I will absolutely get that out to you all next week, along with the link to this recording with edited captions. Stephen, thank you so much for being here.
I just took a picture of my screen to show my accessibility team.
Yay!
It was an honor. Thank you very much. I love doing things like this. So keep me
We hope
thoughts
to
if
see
you ever want me to do it again. I'm here.
around some more now that you're part of the ASC family. So take care, all. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a safe December and a festive season to you if you celebrate. And we'll see you in January. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Crystal.
You bet.